Welcome everybody, my name is Avenir. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. I knew I had some GC content and a couple other things, but I kind of moved away from it. I don't know. I'm kind of all around with it. This one in particular is in response to a video that I had posted a few days ago that was in regards to the Pit 100 push that I was doing with the Rake build that I was working on in Diablo 4. There was a couple of requests. I'm not going to say it was heavily requested, but I figured it was probably eventually going to have to happen anyways. But there was a request that basically said you guys wanted to see what all basically that I was running. So I want to just go ahead and go into it, and I'll show you guys what I did. So we're going to go through the skill tree first, and I'll explain pretty much everything and why I went for what I went for. First, I want to go ahead and let you know there are two builds here. You can't see them because my face is covering them, but there's a pushing and there's a speed farming. So the first thing that you want to do is go ahead and snag the first two nodes, which is going to be Thunder Spike and Enhanced Thunder Spike. This doesn't really matter, and this is just for preference, or I guess more informative than anything. This is not for leveling. This is for after you've gotten your Paragon points, after you've gotten a good bit of gear that you need before you start pushing higher torments. The resistances where you have them, they're not going to be ideal, but there's some adjustments that can be made to fix those, so there's not really a big worry from what I've had in the build anyways, and I've pushed 100 and 105. I haven't tried 110, but that's going to be my next step. So, but you want to take these two first because you have to get them in order to go to the next one. Then we're going to bump all 5 into Rake. Enhanced Rake, and we went with Advantageous Rake because hitting at least one enemy with Rake reduces your longest active cooldown by 0.5 seconds, and this helps a lot because we're going to be hitting tons of enemies regardless. Vigorous I went with, and Balanced Exertion. Now the thing is with one of these pieces of gear, like the Shroud of False Death, I do have that on here. Is it needed? I would say yes, but it's because Rake is not as strong as the Quill, but I don't want to go the meta of Quill. I think Quill is boring, doing trillions and trillions of damage without having to really sweat for it. Just me, there just doesn't seem like it's worth it. I mean, if that makes any sense to anyone, but I went full velocity because if you've dealt damage in the last 5 seconds, you're moving your generating vigor per second, which is a good generator. That's kind of something that we need. Follow through is basic skills, deal 8% increased damage, double to 16% for third cast. This is important, and I'll explain when we get down to the bottom. So then we also have Mirage. We have 3 ranks into Mirage, but because we have the Ring of the Midnight Sun, we get an additional 5. And I do believe because of the Shroud of False Death, yeah, that's the reason why we get another one. So there's 6 total item contribution in here. 100% increased dodge chance during evade, and whenever you dodge, you gain 45% critical strike chance for 3 seconds, which is incredible to hit those because right now, currently, crit chance is only 19%. So getting that additional 45% will put us over 60%, which is really good for being able to hit that crit damage. Unrestrained power, you deal 16% increased damage while unhindered or unstoppable, and I'll explain why this one is going to be another big one as well. Ravager. I chose Ravager mainly because I wanted to go with a full Jaguar build, so all of these are going to be Jaguar skills. I went with Measured Ravager because while it's active, your core skills will instantly dash to your next target or to your target, and all Vigoration generation is increased by 30%. And this is multiplicative, so this is yet another resource generation stack that's going to help maintain that vigor, so the pool of vigor pretty much will never go away. And then of course we have Fueled, Endurance, Perseverance. I'm not going to go too much into these. I'm just mainly showing you which ones I used. Armored Hide. This one's important. This one I will go over because of the maximum resolve. Resolve right now, for some reason, and this is just what I've been told. Props to Woody Joe, by the way, because I was the one who showed him what I was doing with this, and he helped me kind of format and bring this build up to where it's supposed to be. Because I had it set in place. I went and took it to him. You know, cheered a few bits so the message looked really good so he could see it stand out, because you got to see that guy's got over 6,000 views most of the time, the people that are currently watching him in streams, but he was able to review it and let me know which piece exactly was missing, what would it be better to use rather than that, basically. Counterattack, now these may or may not be necessary, But counterattack is, for me at least, it's one of those things that I'm noticing that the more enemies that you have near you, the higher the stack shows. Like the number goes from 1, it goes to 5. And that's kind of like where the big damage can be coming from, unless that's going to be that could be your damage reduction, now that I think about it. I'm not entirely sure, but like I said, the main point of this build and the precipice of this build would be Hunter, Armored Hide, and Rake. The rest of them, and maybe Russian Claw, because it's good for speeding. But the rest of them, it's personal preference which one you want to go with. It's necessary to have Armored Hide. It's necessary to have the Hunter. It's necessary to have Russian Claw, and it's necessary to have Rake, obviously, because this is a Rake build. Every bit of the passives are going to get at least one. So you have Eagle skills that you're not going to be using, so they're just kind of there. And feel free to make any type of formatted changes to this particular build. Let me know if it's positive, and then I would like to take a look at it as well, because this is the build that I came up with, and people were asking how I was able to do as much damage as I was. And so now we're finally near the bottom. These I kind of just put whatever, because Shroud of False Death ended up giving me max over cap on these 3. I have this one as max, so I moved 1 point away from it to put into this one. And honestly, you could take away some of them. Like, for instance, these passives, we didn't have any points into them, so we can't take anything out of them. But if you have something that is currently right now, like this one in particular has an item contribution of 1, I could take one of these and put it wherever, because it's still technically going to be 3 out of 3. It's still max. And that's thanks to the Shroud of False Death, which is another reason why people are really heavily looking into this. Not only does it max out your, or go above the max of your particular passives, the ones that you're mainly using, but you can also take away from some that you may or may not need and put it towards something else to give it that additional boost. Okay, so this is the reason why we went third attack. The Prodigy's tempo is every third consecutive cast of the same basic skill increases all purchase skills ranks by 2 for 5 seconds. Then it's not the biggest one. Every third consecutive cast of the same core potency skill reduces all skills active cooldowns by 10%, increased by 2% for each of their skill ranks. Now there's a reason why we went with this one, and now we're going to go ahead and look into our equipment. The first thing is Loyalty's Mantle, and the reason why I went with this one is because if your Spirit Hall choices match, their bonuses are 100% more potent. So you have every 15th time you deal direct damage to an enemy with Jaguar skill, you'll unleash an additional strike, dealing 15% of the damage you've dealt with him in the last 0.5 seconds. Maximum ferocity is increased by 1. Gain 1 stack of ferocity whenever you kill an enemy or damage a boss. And stacking ferocity means more damage in turn. We went barrier generation because right now there is a cap of barrier generation, but the barrier bonus for me right now is 105.3%. At 100%, it's strong regardless. Barrier being the stack that it is, especially with Resolve. Resolve right now, there's no cap, so Resolve can stack as much as you can put on it. So then, again, we went with Shroud of False Death. The GAs in these, the main one that I would say, because this is an Overpower build, would be Maximum Life. And if maybe people don't understand, because I know there's some people that ask me this question. Overpower is the difference between your base life and your max life. So the more max life you have, the stronger or the more damage you will be doing with Overpower. I went with Redirected Force for gaining increased critical strike damage equal to 70% of your block chance. So having your block chance up too is another big one. That's part of that barrier. The Runic Leggings of Interdiction, I went Interdiction because you gain 15% block chance per resolve stack. So the more resolve you have, the more block chance that you have. And then in turn, this one here increases critical strike damage equal to 70% of your block chance. So the higher your block chance is, the higher crit damage chance you're going to have, or critical damage equal to 70% of that block chance. So the higher the block chance is, the higher that critical damage is going to be, 70% of it. And then I went with Rakanoth's Wake because we need the resistance to all elements, especially because we're not running Tyrael's Might, which Tyrael's Might, and I don't know if a lot of people know or have been looking into it, but Tyrael's Might is like 100-something% in that resistance stack. So if I go up to my speed farming build, because this is what I use for speed farming, I have 117 resistance, 117% resistance to all elements. And as you can see, 241, 234, 197, 197, and 197. And this is minus 100% from penalties because of Torment 4, and I'm still over cap. So we'll go back to pushing because this is the one that I'm mainly focused on, people that wanted to push. Now, some people would be looking at this, and I made this mistake as well. You may not have made this mistake, but I did. And one of the tempers that I went with was Rake size. You don't need Rake size, and the reason is because of the Rod of Capeliki. If you read at the bottom, it says, when cast at maximum vigor, your core skills consume all vigor to return to full damage, cast at their largest size, and become guaranteed critical strikes with, you want the 3%. Increased critical strike damage for each point of vigor spent this way. We're blowing through vigor like it's nobody's business, so we're constantly spending all of that vigor. And because this Overpower build is necessary with this next piece of gear, that's what's giving us that ability to constantly rip through the vigor as much as possible, which is allowing the Rod of Capeliki to give out what it's supposed to be giving out. And then on top of that, your core skills are now additionally basic skills and free to cast, and they'll deal up to 30% reduced damage based on their vigor cost. They don't cost anything. So Rake's not costing us any vigor at all. It's still going to use vigor, but that's because of the Banished Lord's Talisman. After you spend 275, your primary resource, your next core skill guaranteed to overpower. Critical strikes deal that overpower deal 60% increased damage. And then we have the Ring of the Midnight Sun. So when you critically strike, you regain 50% of the vigor you spent in the last 2 seconds, and you gain counterattack's passive effect. And then I'm using Wild Claws because it manifests a Spirit Jaguar, which also casts Rake at a random enemy, dealing 65% base damage. It's not necessary. I mean, I would say it's necessary because it's dealing the same damage minus about let's see, what that would be, 35%. I'm not entirely quick with math, but 35%, and that's not horrible. And plus, you're hitting enemies off screen, so I don't know if people have seen Rake builds do that, but they hit enemies off screen, and sometimes it's negative because it aggroes them, but at the same time, you know, it is what it is. But the biggest thing is that every cast is now considered the third cast instead of it being, you know, if you've used Rake before, then you know it attacks a couple of times and then it does that final Rake. My Rake is just Rake, and yes, I use it in basic stance. I don't use it as a core skill. Our cooldowns, like for instance, my Hunter cooldown just resets like that. As long as I'm attacking as many enemies as I attack, it's reducing the active cooldown by 0.5 seconds. So I just keep shredding through enemies with Rake. That cooldown just pretty much disappears. And you know, the cool thing about it too, and I've noticed this, which might also be bugged as well, is if I'm just striking at air, it still resets anyways. Another thing that I wanted to point out is the Mercenaries. So I hired Variana, and the reason why I did is because of the increased attack speed for 5 seconds whenever Variana damages an enemy up to 10%. But the main one is that Variana's Bloodthirst further increases your attack speed by 5%, which is enhanced by the enemies that you kill, right? So like if you get it, I think it's 10, I want to say. But when she enters Bloodthirst, you gain 30% additive attack speed, 200% additive move speed, and you become unstoppable for 7 seconds, where Variana's Bloodthirst grants 10% additive attack speed to you for the same duration. I don't know if this is actually working, because when she has enough enemies damaged, I mean maybe I'm just not seeing it and I just kind of jump around a lot, but I don't feel like it's giving me that 200% plus movement speed. I'm not entirely sure. Would be great to see something actually, if anybody could actually confirm that, that'd be great. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the Paragon board. Now, and I'm just going to go ahead and say this is like a disclaimer. This was a lot of testing. It was a lot of assistance from other people. Like I said, Woody Joe helped me a lot. I'm going to show you to prioritize which ones are supposed to be prioritized first when you go through this Paragon board, because we want to make sure that you go through the right nodes when you're or while you're leveling, because we're not going to just instantly come into this and be able to spend 328 points. It's just not going to be like that because we're not 300. You might be. If you are, then this would be pretty much easy setup. But I went with Start, obviously with Spirit, Viscous Shield. I went with Fitness, Convergence. I went with Turf, And with sapping, I went Menagerist, and actually this one I changed. And I'll explain why I changed it as well. So actually, I'm gonna go ahead and do that. So in this glyph socket, it was Menagerist because you grant 272.5% bonus to all magic nodes within range. Dealing damage with your Gorilla, Jaguar, Eagle, or Centipede skills increases all damage you deal by 4% multiplicatively for 10 seconds, stacking once per spirit. We only use 2 spirit. This doesn't seem like it would be necessary, and I tested this with this one and with this one. Grant 272.5% bonus all rare nodes within range. You deal 15% increased physical damage to non-elite and bosses, which is normal enemies. That's why this is going to be good for speed farming. I might test this later to see if Menagerist works better with pushing rather than with speed farming, because Outmatch is really good for pushing. And I would say, like I said, Menagerist probably be better for pushing or speed farming than pushing. But this one here, or other way around, because Outmatch deals to normal enemies. So Outmatch for speed, Menagerist for pushing. Maybe. Again, I'm going to take a look at that, because there's other ones that I might want to look at too. Like Guzzler, for instance, every 5 intelligence you deal increased damage while healthy, which is really important. And then another thing I didn't go through on the equipment, so I'm going to go through this before I forget. I went Pot Q because if you spend 5% of the maximum resource, which like I said, we're blowing through vigor like nobody's business, you'll invoke the Druid's Earthen Bulwark, granting yourself a barrier. And that, again, because of the barrier itself, we have that Unstoppable, which shows that little chain thing up at the top. And that's going to be where, if I remember where it was at, right here, you'll deal increased damage while unhindered or unstoppable. So the Earthen Bulwark is constantly being cast. So I originally went Zol Jaw for this build on the runes for the Rod of Capeliki, but then I looked back at it, and teleport really, there's no real reason for me to utilize teleport that way, so I chose not to. But Zol Zal, on the other hand, is invoking a skill from another class will gain 20% maximum life for 6 seconds. So the fact is, this is 150 offering for invoking a skill from another class. It's only 200 offering for us to gain 20% maximum life for 6 seconds. This stacks. It constantly overflows on the duration for this. And remember how I said the difference between the base life and the max life is going to be what decides how much overpowered damage you're doing. This one is 20% maximum life for 6 seconds. So not only is this always going to be active, you're going to be constantly bumping your overpowered damage because it's always active. But back in the Paragon, Spirit is going to be the one that we go with on start. This was my decision because you'll deal increased critical strike damage, and it also has damage to elites in this particular start board. But for every 5 dexterity purchased within range, you deal 22.2% increased critical strike damage. Technically, there's 105 dexterity in this board, which is not bad. So I went ahead and blasted through all of these. I made sure, as prioritizing, make sure that you pick up your magic and rare nodes. I went all the way up. I snagged a glyph. I popped the glyph in, and I only went to 40 dexterity so I can keep the additional points that I have, as you know, from whatever level you're at. Because when I changed this build, I was like 230 something. But when you do this, it's very imperative that you just grab the rare and magic nodes that you're going to be using. We don't need to have the 15% damage to elites. I've done just fine with blasting through elites like there's nobody's business. So come up through, go ahead and grab the next board, which is Viscous Shield. Viscous Shield is currently broken. I do believe it's still bugged right now. But we want to grab the barrier or the damage while you have a barrier, because we always have a barrier active. So it's important. That's another reason why we went with Armored Hide, because of these particular nodes right here. I went ahead and grabbed this glyph for fitness, because for every 5 dexterity, you'll deal increased critical strike damage, which is pretty much fleshed out at 110 dexterity. And so again though, just get the 40, move up and grab these, come over here and grab this one. Now your decision is going to be, where do you go from here? Go ahead and grab Convergence and Turf. So again, we're going to come this way. We're going to grab these nodes. We're going to come this way. We're going to grab this legendary node. And you technically could go this way if you wanted to for starters. Like if you don't have enough points to go this way, going this way would be easier. Then after you do have enough into these, break it off here. And then you'll still be able to keep what you had here. Since it still takes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It still takes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 before you even get close to this cluster anyways. But we want to come in here. We want to grab the glyph. Go ahead and pop turf in there. And then you're just basically going to tag in as much as you can until you hit 25 strength. And then, again, we're going to come back up. We're going to grab Infighter and Wildfire. The reason why we grab Viscous Shield, by the way, is because you'll deal 1% increased, and this is multiplicative, 1% increased damage for each 3% of your maximum life you have as a barrier. You have constant barrier. You can have that barrier is going to be up all the time. So we want, since we have it up all the time, we want to deal increased damage while it's active. And then we went with Convergence because you deal bonus damage equal to 20% of your 2 highest bonuses to deal damage, 2 damage types combined up to 30% total. That's crit damage and overpower damage. If that's how that's explained, that's how I'm seeing it. If that's how it's explained, then that's why we're dealing so much damage in crit and overpower. And then Infighter. This one was really a toss-up. I think pushing Infighter is going to be better. And then in the speed farming build that I have here, I would go Drive, because Drive is you deal more damage the faster you go, pretty much. In Infighter, though, when you dodge or block an attack, you have a high block chance, you gain 2% that's additive, 2% additive increased attack speed, and 1% multiplicative increased damage for 5 seconds, stacking up to 9 times. You can keep that active pretty much forever, as long as we're constantly going through blasting and attacking these enemies while they're hitting us and we're blocking them or dodging them, whichever the case might be. But again, go in, grab the node, flesh it out at 40 dexterity, move up, go ahead and grab the legendary node, and then pop out over here and grab Sapping and Menagerist, which the reason I went with this one is because Sapping is when you cast 3 Gorilla, Jaguar, Eagle, or Centipede skills with the same spirit in a row. We're constantly casting Rake, that's Jaguar. You'll restore 15% of your vigor and deal 30% multiplicative increased damage for 5 seconds. It just stays up. It just stays up. We're constantly casting Rake. Then on top of that, we just swap to Armored Hide and we keep Ravager awake while we're rushing Claw through the enemy. We're using Hunter on the groups that we have, and then we're just shredding with Claw. The more enemies you have around you, I believe, is how this particular deal stacks, right? So counterattack, you'll see the number at the bottom, and it's not charges. I've noticed this is the more enemies you're around, it goes up to 5. Less enemies you're around, like a boss, it stays at 1. And I think that's damage reduction. I don't think that that's dealing an increased damage, but retaliating against close enemies for 80% multiplicative damage when you dodge their attacks, which I don't know why they said it twice. You dodge all direct attacks for 3 seconds per cast, up to 6 seconds. Its cooldown is reduced by 0.5 seconds per stack of ferocity you have, and it passively increases your crit damage by 6% multiplicatively for every close enemy, up to 30% multiplicatively. So again, your crit damage here, looking at 2155.5%, that's wrong. It's actually going to be more like 7,000 to 8,000, which you might not believe me, but we'll go to Kyovashad and I'll show you. Good old Kmart has the training dummies that we can use, and we'll pop up 5 boss training dummies so you can see what I'm talking about. And I went with Menagerist again because dealing damage with your Gorilla, Jaguar, Eagle, or Centipede skills increases all damage you deal by 4% multiplicatively for 10 seconds, stacking once per spirit. It's really a toss-up. I kind of, like I said, I went with Outmatch in this one because it's just not necessary to have Menagerist. It doesn't feel like it's necessary. So in this particular build, I would come back, go ahead and grab Strength, We still need more, so go ahead and grab Strength. And I'll have to readjust. Actually, you know what? I have it in mind. I'll show you what I did. So here's Outmatch, and there's the strength nodes. but I only set it to 25. Oh, and this is a mistake that I made, right? Like I said, there's mistakes that I've made, there's mistakes that nobody else has made, but I did make these mistakes. Pay attention to what it says. It grants 272.5%, which, by the way, all my glyphs are level 100 that I'm doing this with, so it gives you an idea of what it's gonna look like. But it gives you 272.5% bonus to all rare nodes within range, and then the additional bonus is you'll deal 15% increased physical damage to non-elites and bosses. This is, again, normal. And then it also increases damage while healthy by multiplicatively 12.2%. Only hit the strength at 25. Don't hit any higher. There is no reason to hit it higher. And the reason for this is because it doesn't say, like for this one, for instance, for every 5 dexterity purchase within range. This one just says grants 272.5% bonus all rare nodes within range, and the additional bonus occurs purchase within range is that 25 strength. So like for instance, if I come in here and say, like I'll take this one away and I will grab this strength. Remember it was 15.5 or 15%. It's still 15%. There is no reason to go over that strength. So some people may not know. I didn't know because I wasn't paying attention. Again, I'm not a professional at this, but I'm just showcasing what I've done. And sorry if this video seems to be very long, but if anybody has any questions, if they have any comments, if they have anything that they want to voice to me as far as what changes I could make to make this build better, please let me know, because I'm open to criticism, constructive criticism, any type of advice that you guys could give me for this. I'm absolutely fine with it. So, all right, let's go ahead and blast through a 90. I'm not entirely sold on this build just yet. I'm still kind of working through a couple of things that I could actually do. But again, the biggest thing that you want to do running through this is to grab the elites as quick as possible. Grab the elites. Go ahead and take care of them. Done. Move to the next pack. Is there elite in this one? No. Go ahead and get your barrier back up. And if you'll notice on the bottom that what I was telling you about the 20% increased max life for 6 seconds, look at it. That red orb that just continuously keeps rotating. It just keeps going. It's because we constantly are invoking Earthen Bulwark, which is in turn constantly invoking that increased max HP. That's why I went with those runes. So if you're going Overpower, you want, like I said, the difference between your max life, or yeah, your max life and your base life, which your base life is 400. I believe it's 400. Alright, see, we've only got 1346 left and we're already halfway done through a 90. And 90 and 95 are going to be what you want to do to get your glyphs to 100. Even at 90 though, you can still push getting your glyphs to like 85 to 90. You might have like really low chances, but because obviously the higher that you go, the better. Alright, that one's dead. We'll keep moving down. Up, see, there's an elite group right here. Invoked, invoked, invoked. Taken out. Still moving. There's the next group of elites. That one's dead, that one's dead, that one's dead, and that one's dead. So then we move again to the next group. We're going to go ahead and jump up here and see if we got one. We do. There you go. This isn't gonna move, so if you come into this video and you expect it to go like Quill Volley, you're sadly mistaken. I wanted to make a build that was centralized around Rake. I don't want to do Quill. I wanted to do this. So some people may not like it. Some people may go, well, I can be faster with Quill. Go do that, by all means. I'm not knocking it as for other people to do it, like your evade builds. I just didn't want them to break the game with those. never seen a build so dangerously powerful that it broke the game. But technically it wasn't the danger, I mean, excuse me, the damage that it was doing, but it technically was actually the canceling of the evade. That's what was breaking the game. And there you go. So now we're gonna go to the Guardian. We've only been in here about 4 minutes and some change. Actually, no, we haven't even been in here 4 minutes. And so, as you can see, it's moving pretty quickly, actually, and it's dead. And there you go. This is what we wanted to do. This is how we wanted this to go. And so, yeah, this is the build. I've been working on other... Oh, now you get a good example. This is 93, and it's at 25%. So, a good example of the glyphs not being upgraded as quickly as you wanted them to be. So there you have it. That was a pit 90. We blasted through the pit 90, no problem. That was the build. If you have any questions, comments, if you want to try and see if you can make this any better, I don't mind. I really don't. I'm not a professional at this. I just found something that worked for the time being before I really get into the theory crafting, where I can find out which one of these glyphs is better, which one of these boards is better. But those boards and the build for the speed and the pushing are pretty much what I'm going for. So again, I appreciate you guys for dropping in and supporting me by the comments. I've got almost 400 likes on that, or 400 views rather, on the other video, which is insane. So I appreciate that. But again, my name is Avenir. Everybody keeps calling me that, so if it says Ryavan, yeah, it's fine. Or Ryavan, because some people have been calling me that as well. Or Raven, because they've been doing that too, because they just were like, I'll just call you Raven. But Avenir's fine. Av is fine. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Like I said, leave a like, comment, maybe think about subscribing. I don't have a lot of subscribers on here. I've got more on, or more followers rather, on Twitch. And I try and stream pretty much every day, so if you want to catch that, pop over to Twitch. It's Ryavan Gaming. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your evening, your morning, your night, whatever time of the day it is for you. Remember that I want to give back to the world that gave to me, and I will see you guys in the next video.